master the language and gain all the benefits of learning Mandarin in Singapore. To ensure all our students gain the Mandarin language competency, they attend Mandarin class in 3 different classrooms at beginner, intermediate, and advanced level. Learning an additional language also offers your child dozens of cognitive and academic and personal benefits. Learning Mandarin always goes beyond an academic focus. We teach your child about Chinese culture, traditions, and their ways of living. Your child will understand how the language fits into everyday life and be able to use in a variety of settings. Learning Mandarin also helps your child connect with our multicultural community at always.
Hello everyone, my name is Lawrence and I'm an English teacher at One World International Digital Campus. The art of teaching is just not my profession, it is my lifelong passion, and I wholeheartedly believe that the nurturing and the love for learning, we can unlock a world of possibilities. At OS Digital Campus, our curriculum seamlessly integrates language learning with a particular emphasis on English as an additional language and English as a second language. In this video, we are putting the spotlight on the exciting journey of English language acquisition. The English language is a rich tapestry of words, expressions, and stories. It offers an endless adventure. English learning transcends the boundaries of a mere subject. It becomes an immersive experience that opens doors to the world. At OS Digital Campus, we are committed to ensuring that students not only grasp the mechanisms of the English language, but also develop a profound appreciation for the beauty and versatility. Through a variety of engaging activities and holistic curriculum, our students explore the realms of literature, creative writing, public speaking, and cultural studies. This approach not only enhances their language proficiency, but also nurtures critical thinking, effective communication, and cultural awareness, particularly for those studying in EIL and at ESL. In our campus, the process of English learning unfolds as an enriching and transformative journey. It serves as a powerful vehicle that empowers our students, arming them not only with linguistic proficiency, but also with robust arsenal of the life skills and unwavering life assurance, all of which are essential for thriving in an interconnected and ever-changing global landscape.
And the children call me Miss Tan. I am the art teacher at One World International School Digital Campus. I love teaching arts, and my mission is to create an inclusive and diverse learning environment that nurtures the artistic potential within each student, helping them cultivate their unique artistic voice and mindset. At OS Digital Campus, our arts program provides students a wide range of artistic experience. So our students were involved in the world of art, from appreciating it, planning it, and making their own artwork. We study the works of renowned artists and learn about their artistic intentions. Furthermore, we explore all kinds of mediums, including painting, drawing, printing, clay modeling, installation art, and so on. After each creative project, we come together for an art critics session, encouraging critical thinking and allowing students to view their creations from diverse perspectives. Overall, art improves academic performance and impacts the social and emotional development of students. Exploring, experimenting, and critical thinking are essential components of a strong art education. These skills are valuable for children as they develop and advance. And that is the foundation of arts program at OS Digital Campus.
everyone. I'm Carlos, known as Señor Carlos by our students. Welcome to our Spanish class at One World International School Digital Campus in Pungol, where we learn Spanish and have tons of fun. In this video, we will take you through some of the exciting activities we do here in Spanish class. I designed for two main things. The first one is to help our students become fluent in the language, and of course to prepare them for the future for the IGCSE exam when they grow older. In our Spanish classes, we engage in an immersive program where our students hear and use the language from day one. The learning experience revolves around the beauty of the Spanish language and the richness of Hispanic cultures. We are focused on providing the tools and assets for our students to improve their language proficiency through a dynamic curriculum that encompasses speaking, listening, reading, and writing skills. At OS Digital Campus, we foster a welcoming and supportive atmosphere, encouraging active participation and interactive exercises to enhance our conversation and conversational activity. We explore diverse topics from grammar and vocabulary to cultural traditions and contemporary issues, enabling us to not only communicate effectively in Spanish, but also gain a deeper understanding of the Spanish-speaking world. Through engaging activities, group discussions, and real-life scenarios, we work together to make our Spanish class an exciting journey of language discovery and cultural exploration.
Let's go!
Good morning, GIIS SMART Campus.
Here's a school that thrives by incorporating tech to create a robust learning environment. From an in-house film school complete with a green screen studio.
And action!
This is gonna be big! Come on, give it to me, Ogan. To multi-campus online classes. Got a word that I don't think comes from the English language. Appoggiatura. Coding classes for the young. A one-of-its-kind tech-powered sports facility. Here we go. And more. Whoa. It makes me think, this is indeed the school of the future. And our younger generation is in good hands. Hey! You sure?
Leading edge technology, science, and sports.
Innovation, acceleration.
Space exploration. Right here, right now, my future begins. It's hands-on, but it's also academically way up here. So I'm learning the skills I need to explore the universe. And I'm expanding my skill base with these next generation purpose-built studios. They adapt to a changing world. It's the future, and it's now.
Right here, right now. Technology gives me the opportunity to dive deep into research and innovation. With world-class educators to guide the way, I am best prepared for higher education and the university of my choice. New advances, new insights, mean new opportunities, and with them come new creative ways of problem solving. It's the future, and it's now.
Right here, right now, at these smart sports facilities, while best in-class coaches are developing my strengths, guiding me to overcome my weaknesses, and bringing out the best that I can be. So I'm tech-empowered for better results, bringing my dream into reality. The future, it's now.
What does it take to make a leader of tomorrow? A leader is forged by fire, shaped, reshaped, their mettle tested, resilience and strength carefully honed. Yet a leader must also be like water, filling the cracks in a world rich in diversity, attuned to its complexities, flowing, adapting, changing. For a leader of tomorrow sails along on the winds of change, their minds purified by the rarefied air of lofty thoughts and high ideals, the jet streams of innovation and invention, neither of which can be enabled without space. Space that can both contain and expand, mold and liberate. A foundation. For a leader must stand on solid ground. Responsibility breeds sustainability. Wisdom is cultivated by respect for this earth. Building the foundations for tomorrow's leaders begins here.
Good afternoon, esteemed members of the Indian community in Singapore. I'm Dr. Damini Chawla, and it is my absolute honor to welcome you to this beautiful new venue, the Quantum Arena, at One World International School, which is the latest addition to Singapore's community venues. We would like to take this opportunity to share a brief introductory video about the venue. Please enjoy. Thank you all for being seated so punctually. We'll be playing you the video shortly for the Quantum Arena.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Quantum Arena and join us to be part of this magical and immersive experience. To Quantum Arena, Singapore's latest and most innovative educational and entertainment venue. Quantum Arena is part of the Global Village campus, which spans across 600,000 square feet and is home to 2 international schools of the future. The New Age Multipurpose Arena is an initiative by Singapore's Global Schools Foundation and an inspiring space for people of all ages. The Quantum Arena is a cutting-edge arena with one-of-a-kind stellar feature that combines 3 unique features into one single theater. The first being the advanced immersive sound technology to bring about the best sound experience for performing arts. The second being highly specialized drama technology that offers most natural drama experience through a mic-less environment, which ensures crisp auditory experience up to a distance of 50 meters. The third being ultimate IMAX equivalent movie theater experience with Dolby Atmos 7.1 cinema sound system for delivering educational movies to students in an exceptional format. This performing arts experience is supported by 8 latest generation LED screens to give a unique viewing experience. Additionally, to support people with hearing difficulties, there are special hearing devices available so our audiences can receive crystal clear sound. If you wish to use this device, please approach any of our friendly staff or crew members. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Quantum Arena and join us to be part of this magical and immersive experience. Welcome to Quantum Arena, Singapore's latest.
We're really excited to welcome you here. We hope you enjoy that sound experience. Thank you all for joining us for the first large-scale community event to be hosted at the Quantum Arena today. May I please now request your attention for a safety briefing.
Welcome to the Quantum Arena of OWIS Digital Campus Punggol. This is a next-generation space designed to be a flexible, fully automated multi-purpose hall for the best experience. As we prioritize your well-being, we kindly request that you silence or turn off your mobile devices for the duration of your visit. In the unlikely event of an emergency, it is imperative to remain calm and follow the provided instructions for a swift and orderly evacuation. The theater is equipped with 6 emergency exits strategically located throughout the premises for your convenience and safety. Exit 1 and 2 are situated at the rear of the seating area, while exit 3, 4, and 6 can be found towards the front, visible on both the left and right sides. Additionally, exit 5 is positioned backstage to facilitate a comprehensive evacuation plan. Should evacuation become necessary, please proceed to the nearest exit indicated on the provided map and vacate the premises in an orderly manner. Thank you for your attention to these important safety guidelines, and we hope you enjoy the event.
We're very lucky to be gathered here today for a very special interaction with Dr. S. Jaishankar. He's currently being given a traditional Indian welcome by the students of One World International School and will be joining us shortly. We are very certain that many of you will have burning questions for Dr. Jaishankar. You will see a QR code displayed on the side screens at various points today. Please feel free to scan the QR code to submit any questions you may have, and we will try to get to as many of them as we can during the interactive session. Please remain seated as we wait for Dr. Jaishankar to join us. I would like to request you once more just to ensure that your phones are on silent. Thank you all for being here today. Please join me in welcoming amidst all of us Dr. S. Jaishankar, External Affairs Minister of India. Dr. Jaishankar, it is our honor and privilege to have you with us this afternoon. Thank you for being here. We begin today's event with the auspicious Ganesh Vandana, which will be performed by the students of Global Indian International School. Their performance is a testament to the rich traditions and artistic expressions of our motherland. May I please take this opportunity to request you once again to ensure your devices are on silent mode. Let us join in giving the students a warm round of applause as they take the stage.
गणदैवताय गणाध्यक्षाय धीमहि गुणशरीराय गुणमण्डिताय गुणेशानाय धीमहि गुणातीताय गुणाधीशाय गुणप्रविष्टाय धीमहि एकदन्ताय वक्रतुण्डाय गौरीतनयाय धीमहि गजेशानाय भालचन्द्राय श्रीगणेशाय धीमहि एकदन्ताय वक्रतुण्डाय गौरीतनयाय धीमहि गजेशानाय भालचन्द्राय श्रीगणेशाय धीमहि गानचतुराय गानप्राणाय गानान्तरात्मने गानोत्सुकाय गानमत्ताय गानोत्सुकमनसे गुरुपूजिताय गुरुदैवताय गुरुकुलस्थायिने गुरुविक्रमाय गुह्यप्रवराय गुरवे गुणगुरवे गुरुदैत्यकलक्षेत्रे गुरुधर्मसदाराध्याय गुरुपुत्रपरित्रात्रे गुरुपाखण्डखण्डकाय एकदन्ताय वक्रतुण्डाय गौरीतनयाय धीमहि गजेशानाय भालचन्द्राय श्रीगणेशाय धीमहि
Thank you to the very talented students from Global Indian International School for that enchanting performance. We will now screen a short video on the saga of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. This video pays tribute to one of India's most revered freedom fighters, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, and his indomitable spirit while highlighting his connection with Singapore. I seek your kind attention as we embark on this historical journey.
August 1945. At a memorial on Singapore's seafront, the words Ittifaq, Ehtmad, Qurbani etched on its three marble pillars. Unity, faith, sacrifice, the motto of the Indian National Army. A small group of people stand in silent homage. The tricolour with the charkha flies at half-mast. Major General Muhammad Zama-Kiani places a wreath on the INA Martyrs Memorial. A wreath in tribute to the man known simply as Netaji, to thousands of soldiers of the Indian National Army, and to an entire nation. Now mourning his death in an air crash on the 18th of August.
I'm sure you know Netaji's story, right? But do you know Singapore played an important part in his story? Singapore occupies a unique place in the annals of the last war of Indian independence, the Azad Hind movement, and the Indian National Army, which was led as its supreme commander between July 1943 and August 1945 by Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose.
Bose arrived in Singapore on 2nd July 1943 and received a rousing welcome at the Kallang Aerodrome. Indian National Army commanders J.K. Bhosle and Muhammad Zama-Kiani received him at the airport. The INA soldiers gave him a guard of honor.
The Kallang Aerodrome is no longer operational, but this building is very much a landmark in modern Singapore, as it was in the past.
Selva tells Janaki it was here, at the Cathay building, that Netaji made his first public appearance in Singapore. He was formally introduced on 4th July 1943 as the new leader of the INA by Rash Bihari Bose, another great Indian revolutionary leader in exile.
क्योंकि अब ये वक्त निहायत नाजुक है, मैं इस जिम्मेदारी को कबूल करा और खुदा से दुआ मांगता हूँ कि उन्होंने हमें वो ताकत, वो जोश और वो बहादुरी दें जिससे हम अपने हमवतनों की पूरी मर्जी के मुताबिक लड़ाई लड़े और हिंदुस्तान को आजादी पहुंचाए।
Day after that inspiring speech at the Kete, Netaji came to this field, known as the Padang, to address the INA troops for the first time.
On 5th July, more than 15,000 soldiers of the Indian National Army assembled here to hear Subhash Chandra Bose for the first time. Netaji called it the proudest day of his life.
इनकलाब जिंदाबाद, आजाद हिंद जिंदाबाद।
Bose gave them the battle cry, Dilli Chalo. Just a few weeks earlier, Bose had given a series of inspiring radio broadcasts from the region.
Hour has struck, and every patriotic Indian must advance towards the field of battle. Only when the blood of freedom-loving Indians begins to flow will India attain her freedom.
Bose expanded on that idea during his next rally at the Padang on 9th July. He addressed a crowd of over 60,000 people. These weren't just INA soldiers, but also thousands of civilians.
Tens of thousands of civilians from the Indian and Indian origin communities throughout Southeast Asia, from that point on, volunteered to join the Indian National Army as soldiers. They were trained and they became active freedom fighters as well.
मेरे पिताजी श्री राम मोदराय सेकंड लेफ्टिनेंट थे आजाद हिंद फौज में। मेरे पिताजी उस रैली में थे।
The man who really brought the image of post-war Netaji's legacy was Mr. Nathan. He had heard Netaji talking or giving an oration at the Padang, and so he became enamored, and it became a lifelong pursuit to do something about his legacy. This is what is remarkable, that a man could inspire people who had never been to the motherland, and yet there was this urge to do something.
At the 9th of July rally and at the women's meeting shortly after, Bose brought up one of his most cherished ideas: the active involvement of Indian women in the battle for freedom and the formation of a women's regiment. Present on these occasions was a young doctor named Lakshmi Swaminathan. Subhashini Ali, Dr. Lakshmi's daughter, tells us how Netaji convinced those who were initially not in favor of this idea.
He didn't agree with them, and he said, you just find one woman who can be developed into a leader, and then you see what we do. You don't know Indian women. And then the recruitment started. Most of the recruits came from very poor backgrounds. And most of them were South Indians, Kerala and Tamil Nadu. About, I think, 75%. They were the ones who came and became Ranis.
The girls presented a guard of honor to Bose on 12th July. Gradually, other young women also joined the regiment.
मेरी माताजी रानी झांसी रेजिमेंट में ज्वाइन हुई थी। ये लोग ज्यादातर उस समय जैसे सिपाहियों को जो चोट वोट लग जाती थी, फर्स्ट एड का मदद करती थी, जाकर पानी पिलाती थी. So this was where the barracks of the Rani of Jhansi regiment were located. And that's the Singapore Arts Museum. In those grounds, the Rani Street.
She used to keep telling us that we just had the same training as the men, and she also had administrative work to do. But they worked very hard. I mean, they had very minimum facilities, very Spartan.
बहुत गर्व महसूस होता था और उस समय ये चिंता बिल्कुल नहीं रहती थी कि हमको क्या होगा. केवल सबके साथ बढ़कर और ज्यादा से ज्यादा काम करने के लिए हरदम प्रेरित रहते थे. कोशिश करते थे कि मैं और क्या कर दूं और क्या कर दूं. रात को नींद लगती थी, न कोई थकान महसूस होती थी. ये माता जी का हमारा कहना था.
The Rani of Jhansi regiment soldiers were extraordinarily keen to fight in the last war of Indian independence on Indian soil. Indeed, at the beginning of 1944, the Rani of Jhansi regiment soldiers sent a letter in the form of a petition written in their own blood to Netaji, asking to be sent to the front.
Other than my mother, nobody in the Rani of Jhansi regiment had ever been to India. But their feelings were so strong because of their ancestry that they were ready to die for Indian freedom, which is such an inspiring thought today,
Netaji assumed the role of the Supreme Commander of the Azad Hind Force on 25th August 1943. After starting work in the army, Netaji then set out on a whirlwind tour of various parts of Southeast Asia. He appealed to the people of Indian origin to come forward and contribute to the cause. People vied with each other to give away everything they had in response to his call.
The INA was like a showcase of national unity.
This unity was evident in all the training camps of the INA. A simple form of Hindustani was taught to all the soldiers. There were no separate kitchens and everyone took food together without distinction of caste or religion. When he was satisfied that the INA had been thoroughly organized, Bose took the next logical step. On the 21st of October 1943, Netaji proclaimed the first provisional government of Free India outside India in Singapore, the Arzi Hukumat-e-Azad Hind. A historic moment in the Indian freedom struggle that also unfolded at the Cathay building. The tricolour with the Gandhian charkha was adopted as the national flag. The cabinet was formed with Netaji as the Prime Minister and Minister of War and Foreign Affairs. Jana Gana Mana by Rabindranath Tagore was their first choice for an anthem. Netaji agreed with them, but he wanted one thing changed. He wanted the words to be in simple Hindustani. On October 24th, Netaji addressed an audience of over 50,000 Indians on the Padang. He announced that the provisional government of Azad Hind had declared war on Britain and America. After this declaration, Netaji travelled extensively, seeking and receiving the support of several Asian nations for the Azad Hind government. And then, as a prelude to the war that was to be launched from the northeast frontier of India, Netaji moved the headquarters of the INA and the Azad Hind government to Rangoon, present-day Yangon. On March 18, 1944, the INA crossed the Indo-Burma frontier towards Imphal and Kohima and took the battle for freedom onto Indian soil. The INA fought bravely for over 4 months. But the tide of the war eventually turned against them, and they were forced to retreat. Netaji's last public appearance in Singapore was at a play on the life of Rani Lakshmibai of Jhansi, enacted by members of the Women's Regiment. At the end of the performance, he sang the national anthem, and the 3,000 men and women of the INA assembled in the open-air theatre sang along with him.
If only these pictures could speak, they would tell us many more stories of a man who gave a sense of purpose and direction to an entire generation of Indians who lived here but fought for the land of their forefathers.
Thank you, Ms. Dolly Davenport, for this enlightening video. Netaji's life is an inspiration for us all, as are the young people of Indian origin who united with him to work together towards India's freedom, despite being situated outside of India's borders. It is now time to welcome a man of great distinction, a seasoned diplomat and visionary statesman, Dr. S. Jaishankar, the External Affairs Minister of India. Many of us have fond memories from his tenure as the High Commissioner of India to Singapore from 2007 to 2009. His contributions during that period have left an indelible mark on the bilateral relations between our nations. Today, he continues to shape India's foreign policy with wisdom and foresight. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Dr. S. Jaishankar.
Good afternoon and namaskar to all of you. It's an enormous pleasure for me to be back in Singapore. And I was telling Dr. Atul Tadmurkar that this is in a way a kind of a memory, a trip down memory lane. I think I was one of his earliest visitors when the GIIS began in Queenstown. So I'm delighted to see the global school family today. I think you've reached, 45,000 students? And not just happy to see that in Singapore, but when I travel around the region, again, I'm very impressed by the contribution you're making. And I'm therefore particularly pleased that I'm one of your early visitors to this campus. Friends, it's very inspiring to begin a program with something as powerful as what all of us saw. And the saga of Netaji is, of course, something which is inextricably linked with Singapore. So a lot of our sense of the India-Singapore relationship goes back to the role that Singapore played 80 years ago in hosting Netaji and providing a platform for the Indian freedom movement to take a very, very definitive turn. Now, when I looked at this movie, a few thoughts came to my mind. One, that at last in India, we have now given Netaji his due by installing his statue at the Kartavya Path, the main boulevard of the capital, so that he remains a visible inspiration for the entire nation at all the important occasions, and in many ways a permanent inspiration, because this is a part of the capital where people in hundreds of thousands come from across the country. But looking at this film, there were a few other thoughts as well. One, of course, Netaji's own saga is very much a reminder for us about the struggle that India has gone through in the last century and more. And as times get better, as India rises, it's important that we also remind ourselves of the struggles that preceded it, which made it possible. And that we look at our history from our own eyes, not from the eyes of others who may have been the dominant powers after 1945, and give therefore the right value, the right recognition to those forces who were ultimately responsible for the freedom of India. At a personal level, Netaji himself and the entire Indian National Army are embodiments of courage and sacrifice. They again underline that in life it is important to take risks, to deal with hardships, to not shrink from challenges. And as I said, this is really a very valuable connection between India and Singapore, and between India and actually the entire Southeast Asia. Now, when I think of that connection, I fast forward to our contemporary era. And again, it's natural to reflect on how much the India-Singapore relationship has changed in the last 3 decades. And this school itself is one example of that as our connections grew closer, as the community has grown, as India has become more globalized, the ties between India and Singapore have reflected that, and it's been my privilege to be part of this journey at least for a decade and a half personally. And in India, we connect this period with actually the beginnings of reform. That if one looks at what was begun as a look-east policy, then became an act-east policy, 30 years ago, this was also as India-Singapore relations grew, this was also an era when India gave up on policies which had not served her well, and took a much more open and constructive view of the opportunities in the world. And a series of reforms thereafter took place, and these have certainly deepened in the last decade. And in many ways, what began then have actually opened up vistas for India in the Pacific. And today, when we speak about India in the Indo-Pacific, the story in many ways actually began with Singapore. So when it comes to this relationship, as a foreign minister today visiting Singapore, reflecting on the history of our ties, I do want to emphasize that the more India globalizes, the greater the rise of India, the more prominent it becomes in terms of its economic weight, in terms of its political influence. I am sure every aspect of this rise will be reflected in the intensity and the quality of the relationship with Singapore. So Singapore has been our partner in the globalization of India, and that role, that companionship is something that India values very deeply. Now, of course, when we look at history, there's always a natural desire to look back at the roads that were not taken. Sometimes at opportunities that were not utilized. So it's also, I think, appropriate as we begin a program with a look back at history to keep that in mind as we look ahead. And I think it's very natural whenever, we have a gathering of the Indian diaspora, that we speak about what is happening in India right now. Because for every Indian and for every person of Indian origin, that thought is never far from our minds. So let me share with you what is the national mood today. Simply put, it's very confident, it's very energetic, I would say, very enthusiastic, very much a sense that a lot of things are possible, that, the last decade has been one of considerable achievements, but there is still a job ahead of us to get done, and that is a theme that I will come back to. Now, when I say that the national mood is confident, again, as a probably among the world's most frequent flyers, I can tell you, going around the world, that is not the case all over the world. What is perhaps made, in a way, India a little bit different right now is that the post-COVID bounce back has been very strong. The bounce back has been strong economically. It has been strong in terms of the societal morale, in a sense of how we ourselves responded, particularly to the challenge of the COVID, from which many countries haven't really pulled out of. And a combination, I think, of policies initiated over a period of time and which were persevered with even in the midst of COVID, today have actually put India in that kind of position that I share with you. If one looks at it from an economic perspective, there is no doubt today that it's much easier to do business in India. When one looks at it from the perspective of an average citizen, it is I would say the burden of rules and regulations and bureaucracy have been lightened enormously. Any of you who visit India, and I'm sure many of you do this frequently, would also see the transformation in the infrastructure, that what is called the Gati Shakti initiative has actually, what we used to talk amongst ourselves about other countries, that see there is so much road building going on there, there's so much, their infrastructure is so much different. That today has become the talk by others about us and by us about ourselves. So, and perhaps the most impactful change, the one most visible, is something which I think the younger generation in the room will particularly identify, which is the digitization of India. That the embrace of technology that we see among the most, the broadest cross-section of people, that it has really, in many ways, transformed lives. Now, When I say again that, there is a sense that a lot has been achieved and there is great optimism that so much more is possible. Why is that? I think in part because challenges with which we struggled for generations today, we are actually able to now find solutions in a matter of a few years. And these can be very basic things, things which in Singapore you would take for granted. But somebody who was living in Singapore 75 years ago would not have done so. Access to water, to electricity, to housing, to roads, to schools. Now, a lot of this in India, it was improving at a very gradual rate. And what we have now seen is how these timelines can be crunched, how change, when we are today talking about water, for example, there is one of the big programs underway in India, something called the Jal Jeevan Mission. Now, we are talking today of literally covering 400, 500 million people in a matter of a few years in terms of addressing something as basic as water. And again, because today the digital backbone has become the basis of governance, India's, I would say, delivery system is able to do things on a scale and I would say, a pace which is really extraordinary. In fact, when one looks at a lot of the schemes, often the numbers that we speak about, these are the numbers not just of other countries. These are sometimes the numbers of entire continents. That when we speak today that we regularly provide food support to people of lower incomes, that's a size which is in excess of 800 million people. So that's like feeding Europe and Americas at one go. Or when we say today that, we connected up more people to bank accounts, we're talking of 400 million new bank accounts. Even something as practical as replacing firewood in people's homes with gas cylinders. There are more beneficiaries of the scheme than the entire population of Germany. If one looks at the houses which have been built and the people who in the last few years have become the inhabitants at roughly 5 per family, the number of people who have got homes, and I'm now talking to a society where the value of HDBs is so well known. Imagine, we have done it in India in the last few years that there are almost 200 million beneficiaries of homes which have been provided by the government. So this is today really the transformation which is underway. So when people say that, yes, our lives have changed, not as a generation, not in terms of, 40, 50 years, but in terms of 5 years, 10 years. This is the reason today, actually, for the confidence in the country. Now, if I were to move beyond society to economic activity, again, something very different and very profound is happening in India. There is a reason why the economy is growing at 7%. And the reason, again, as I said, emanates partly from making it easier to do business. But that by itself is not enough. There has to be a vision for a country. There has to be a leadership. There have to be policies. You know that all those of you who live in Singapore, who have spent time here, that what has changed this country has actually been those qualities: the leadership, the vision, the commitment, the delivery, the efficiencies. So today what you are seeing in India is actually a commitment to manufacturing, to creating more businesses, greater employment. And this is actually in a way buttressed by a conscious attempt to create a startup culture. That we can say today that in India, we have the world's third largest startup culture. And it's not just a startup culture today. One looks at the growth of the unicorns who serve as an inspiration to young people. This is also something which has been very, very impressive. So if one looks at it, and I do as a person who spent his entire working life, most of it with the government, I'm very intrigued by something. Why is it that the same system is suddenly able to give very different results? I think this is something worth thinking about. And I see that actually, frankly, in my own ministry, that among the many tasks that we have, one of them is to issue passports. So each one of you here is a customer at one point of time. Now, if the older ones would remember, I think your customer experiences wouldn't have been that great. Many of you would have waited for months, multiple months sometimes, to get a passport. Today, for the younger people, I think most of them, for them, it would be weeks, maximum a month or two. And if one looks at it, really, on the ground, it has just been a greater desire to serve the public better. That the same system, the same foreign ministry now has repurposed post offices, which had less business to do because people write less letters, and brought them in on board as a passport application center. And lo and behold, suddenly our footprint, without any greater investment, has actually increased fourfold. So I'm giving you this as an example of not just of the change in India, but how a vision, a leadership is able today to bring out the best in a country. We've always felt that, yes, we have tremendous potential. But the talk in the rest of the world remains most of the time at potential. Today we have actually in different sectors achievements to put before the world, and not just before the world, before our own people. And I see that today, particularly in the youth, that when we ask people saying, define your ambition, there is a reason why we speak of an Amrit Kal of 25 years. We speak not just of one term where we are going to realize something. This vision of a Viksit Bharat, it is possible. Again, I'm standing in a country which is itself a demonstrator of what could be achieved in a generation, in a quarter century. And that certainly today is very much in the grasp of India. And our expectation is that the coming generations would think bigger and bigger, bolder and bolder as we set about it. But it's one thing to have dreams. It's equally important to know your roots. What we saw was part of that. And roots have different expressions. When we speak today of being Indian, somewhere within each one of us, there is a certain sense of culture, of heritage, of tradition, of civilization. The combinations, expressions may be different for each one of us. But if we have a desire to go somewhere ahead, we must also know where we are coming from. If we want to become something, we must know what we are. And this awareness, again, is not something which is natural and self-generating. Because, again, there were periods in our history where collectively a lot of our sense of ourselves has been diminished. So when we talk today about being vocal for local, when we speak about traditions, every one of us, from whichever part of India we came from, we all have traditions, and there are crafts and skills in each village of India. But these will remain strong if we recognize them, value them, and support them. So when we speak today about honoring Vishwakarmas, when we talk about one district, one product, when we say that, look, we have to be Atmanirbhar. Atmanirbhar doesn't mean cutting yourself from the world. Atmanirbhar is actually discovering your own strengths to engage the world much more intensively. And that is something which I would say is again a process very strongly unfolding in the country and giving the country a greater awareness of its own strengths. Now, the challenges of India, a lot of them are societal, many of them are developmental, some of them, as I said, is a good feeling about our own past, about our present and our future. But every society also faces its own, I would say, political challenges. In our case, one which was particularly formidable related to what is referred to as Article 370 issue pertaining to Jammu and Kashmir. And again, it is something which had dragged on, that, a temporary provision of a constitution had just extended itself decade by decade, generation by generation. And it is an expression of our national resolve today that a long pending issue has finally been resolved. So when I today speak to you about in India, about what is the national sentiment, I was recently a minister who was accompanying President Macron of France. And I related this yesterday in my talk as well. That he asked me, he said, can you just very quickly define for me, give me a sense of what is happening in India. And I gave him those 4 numbers which came readily to my mind. That if one looked at the last decade, we have built 8 new airports every year. We are building 28 kilometers of national highway every day. 3 new cities are getting metros every 2 years. And 2 new colleges are opening in this country every day. So I put those numbers because, again, all of it, there are tasks to be done. Even our achievements may not always be perfect. But if I were to even give you half those numbers, quarter of those numbers, a few decades ago, none of you would have taken me seriously. So this sense, and again, when I speak of the younger generation and the embrace of technology in our country, in India, on an average month, there are 10 to 11 billion cashless payments which are done. Okay, very less and less people, it's bad for the wallet industry. Okay, less and less people carry wallets now. Now, to give you an example, comparison, I think the number for America is about 4 to 5 billion a year. I'm talking 10 to 11 billion a month. So, and the really interesting story, or take telecom, because all of us today, so much of our lives are devoted to the phone. We imported our 2G, we imported our 3G, we imported our 4G. Today, in India, we are having one of the fastest rollouts of the 5G, but it's an Indian 5G stack. And it's the big things and the small things. There's a very interesting concept. I urge some of you, when you have time, to just, look at it. It's called drone Didis. These are young people, women, girls, across the country who are mastering the use of drones and their application, particularly for agriculture purposes, but for other daily activities of life as well. And it is something which is actually supported by the government as a kind of a developmental activity. Or if one looks at, something so perennial, it's been debated for generations, which is how do we today ensure, all of us today want to eat organic. We want to be free from pesticides. So this idea of nano fertilizers, which are much healthier on the soil than the regular ones. Or, activity which all of us do, board trains. Any of you today who boards a Vande Bharat train will come away with a completely different view of what the Indian Railways can offer. So I want today to leave with you that impression. This is not just a country on the move. Today it is a country with a momentum. It is a country with a vision. It is a country with an ambition. And in many ways, when I go out of India, I find increasingly I discuss less and less foreign policy. And I discuss more and more with other people what is happening in India. And I find that over a period of time, actually impressions about India have changed in the world. So when I ask myself why, a few reasons occurred to me. I thought it was something, again, I could share with you. One, as I said, to get for a large economy to be growing at 7% with the prospect of further acceleration, with a visibly better governance. I think that itself is something that the world has noted. But the world has also noted the change of behavior, the change of attitude, the different levels of confidence that I keep stressing. So they saw that we had a very daunting responsibility last year of managing the G20, of leading the G20. And very honestly, the prediction in the market was that, the Indians are in for a really tough time. They were not entirely wrong. We were in for a tough time, except we overcame it. That contrary to the expectations of many, we were actually able to get a very divided world to come together on some of the most difficult issues of the day, and then agree on an agenda which is good for, particularly for the developing countries, what is called the Global South. When we've had tough decisions to make, this too is something the world has taken note of. That this is an India today which will not yield to pressure, which will speak its mind, which when it has to make a choice, will make a choice with the welfare of its citizens and the welfare, where necessary, of the Global South in mind. And you could see that when it came to an issue like, whether we should be buying oil from Russia or not. You could see that too when it came to, do we go about business as usual when it comes to terrorism, or do we do something much more firm and impactful on the people who practice it? So the idea of one is definitely a stronger, more capable India. But two, it is an India which at one level has the ability to create a kind of a consensus. It is an India which is willing to take tough calls. It is an India which will look after its citizens and people of Indian origin. And we have demonstrated that time and time again, because it has been actually a very difficult decade. There were countries who left their citizens to fend for themselves when the conflict in Ukraine broke out. We sent 90 planes, 90 missions to get not just our own students out, but those of many neighboring countries and third countries as well. And it was not a one-off. If you look today at, and this is important because as we globalize, more and more Indians will work and live and settle in different parts of the world. It is an important part of our responsibility to secure them, to ensure the well-being, if they are in difficult straits, to stand by them. I give you Ukraine as an example. This happened in actually very difficult circumstances in Sudan at the beginning of last year. In October, we had to move out people very rapidly from Israel. In fact, the numbers are very, very small, but you even have Indians who are living in Haiti. And from Haiti, we have made an effort to move them out to a neighboring country. So I would say the capable India, the diplomatic India, the firm India, the protective India, in many ways, the innovative India. I would find it very difficult to describe to you in words the impact which the Chandrayaan landing had on much of the world. For many people, there were parts of the world, and we actually were in Africa at that moment. I was with the Prime Minister when that landing took place. There were many countries who took as much pride, if not more, in that achievement than we did. Because somewhere there was that sense that, look, here is an India today whose journey began with that film that you saw. But that journey has today brought India to a point where India can not just go to the moon, but find a particularly challenging way of doing it and execute it successfully. There is also an India that is a friend of the world. And again, one of the good lessons of difficult times has been actually friendship begets more friendships. We stepped forward during COVID and supplied vaccines to 99 countries in the world. Many of those countries are countries who could not have hoped to get vaccines. They actually told you very openly. We know our place is somewhere low down in the queue. Many of them were very small. There were issues of affordability. There were issues of, logistics. But most important, there was issues of access. They were simply not big enough to get some of the vaccines coming that way. And if any of you ever want to see, I would say, an object lesson of what diplomacy, a good-hearted action in the world can do, I would urge you, go and look at the YouTube. There are a collection of actually ministers who came 2 years ago to New York. And they wanted to do an event to demonstrate. These are all countries who had received vaccines from India. And one of them, I forget, I think it was a Jamaican, but I could be wrong. She actually says, I carry India inside me. So I put that because, when most of you look at the news, when you follow the world, you will read today, countries are turning inwards. It's all about me, the desire to do anything for the world is not there. I want to tell you that's not true. Certainly, an India which is more capable, an India whose reach is greater, is also an India which wants to be of greater utility and greater relevance to the world. And we step forward at times of difficulty. I gave you the example of COVID. I give you a much more practical and immediate example, but it's something which was very, very daunting at that time. When we had an economic crisis in Sri Lanka, you actually watched a neighbor struggle. In a sense, the economy was sinking by the day. And everybody was debating to do, not to do, but nobody was moving. Finally, it took an India to make not just the first move, but to make the big move. And we gave a package of $4.5 billion to support Sri Lanka in its hour of need. Now, the world is full of homilies about being good neighbors. But when it is crunch time, you can actually see who steps forward and who gives lectures. So I mention this to you because each of these actions today, in one way or the other, is shaping the world. Across the Indian Ocean today, if there is a problem, people see India stepping forward. We have, again, there is today a very difficult situation in the Red Sea area. We have 21 ships in the Red Sea, 21 naval ships in the Red Sea, who are fighting piracy, who are boarding and searching ships to ensure that anything that you get in Singapore is coming safely through those seas, who have done in the last 3 months, 4 months, more than 1,000 of these search and board missions to ensure that maritime traffic is safe. So these have today, in a way, they are examples of the responsibility that India has carried and should carry, in our view. But each one of these, I think, is also, I would say, a part of the image that the world is today building about India. And it may be, as I said, it could be terrorism, it could be natural disasters, it could be COVID. It could even be issues like climate change. That if you see many of the big ideas about climate change, propagation of solar energy, for example, or helping to extend practices, best practices on disaster resilience, or even something you could say so small, but I would say so big as changing your food habits of eating more millets, because millets are greener and healthier and economically better to eat than the regular grain which we all consume. Today, India is at the forefront of ideas. And at the end of the day, the world is built on the power of ideas. So when the world sees all of this, the world also reciprocates. That if you see, as I said, friendships beget friendships. That if you are good to the world, believe me, the world also wants you in. The world feels that there is a value in being associated with India. And we've seen that, we just had last year along the G20, we had a big connectivity initiative through the Middle East. And there was an enormous keenness to bring India into this initiative. Or a few years ago, when we were looking at the Indo-Pacific again, the desire to partner India. Because if you look at it, the other countries, the US, Japan, Australia, these are alliance countries. But each one of them actually found value in working with India. It need not be geostrategic. We recently had, this was last month, the inauguration of a temple in Abu Dhabi. It was an enormous gesture from a partner country. And it was a gesture because they valued the friendship and knew the significance of that gesture. So I want today to leave with all of you that sense today, that in India is definitely the foundations that we have built, especially over the last decade. They today provide the basis for a growth that we are going to see over the next 25 years. That there are there is a vision, but there are very practical steps today to realize those ambitions. Those practical steps are being expressed in policies. As time goes on, I think obviously those will take a greater form. But at the end of the day, definitely an India which is already the 5th largest economy, which was I think about 6th, it was I think 10th or 11th a decade ago. So an India which is today the fifth largest economy, likely to overtake Japan and Germany in the coming years, becoming the third largest economy. One which has lifted 250 million people out of absolute poverty. And that lift has created an upward movement where if you look in terms of income changes, these are happening by the tens of millions, sometimes the hundreds of millions, whose production capacities, whose consumption, whose technology, whose innovation, and most of all, whose young people are today driving this process. This country, I think, will be definitely a bigger factor in the world, but I think also a stronger partner of Singapore. Once again, I'm very happy to come to Singapore, a place with which I have great personal associations, but which I treat very much as a kind of I would say, an original reform partner, if you would, which has served in many ways as an inspiration for many of these changes that I've spoken about. I think it's been great to come back to share these ideas with you. I thank you for your patience in listening to my remarks, and I'd be happy to continue this conversation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jaishankar, for your inspiring keynote address. May I please invite you to take a seat on stage? Could I please request Mr. Atul Temurnikar, founder of the Global Schools Foundation, to join us on stage to moderate as we delve into a meaningful interactive session with our esteemed audience and the Honorable External Affairs Minister. Thank you to those who have submitted questions through the QR code. You may continue to do so as this session progresses. You may also choose to raise your hand if you have a question. Do remain seated and we will bring a microphone to you. Enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jaishankar, for such an insightful and very interesting speech. I think we all almost hear almost every speech that you have in the social space. And I would say this is today, what we have seen is one of the most remarkable ones. And thank you for gracing us with your presence at this quantum arena at the One World International School. The audience will agree with me that when I say we are fortunate to be able to listen to you and get a chance to interact with you during your visit here in Singapore, we hope to make this a memorable one for you. Let me start a session by congratulating you on your book, Why Bharat Matters. We're all looking towards reading this book and understanding your nuanced insights into the way the country is shaping up and moving forward in this digitized economic climate. At this wonderful 600,000 square feet Global Village campus, which has 2 international schools, One World International School and Global Indian International School, which are designed with new age learning environments in mind, as you said, and keeping in touch with the digitization of the world. The National Geographic Channel had featured this very Global Indian International School as a school of the future. Today, we have Global Schools Foundation educating over 45,000 students across 64 countries, 64 campuses, 11 countries. And our schools have a multicultural environment, academic spaces, and skill studios, which have been providing education to students from 70 nationalities, including the Japanese, Koreans, many Southeast Asians, and Arab countries as well. Now, as India has showed and demonstrated in the IT sector, do we see a similar starting or a beginning for the education sector where Indian education players / education can play any role in the world education space? That's one. And I'll just get a few more before we go to the audience. You had a wonderful stint in Singapore, as you recollected very well. We had you as one of the earliest visitors. And you also invited me once to Beijing to take over one of the schools there, but unfortunately we couldn't take over. What are your memories from your experience in Singapore, and especially the fact that time we had Mr. Lee Kuan Yew very actively involved in politics? So some memories from there. And you worked with several foreign ministers in your entire space. Any particular things that you would mention about any foreign minister, or particularly about Sushma Swaraj ji? She was very popular here, and any incident that you recollect or as a memory with her interaction?
Okay, that's a fair number of questions. But let me start with the education. I think, Atul, what you people have done already in many ways has set a trend, and often policy responds to the realities. So when we see Indian educational institutions go out and make the mark, uh, it's at some stage people start to understand the value of that. The new education policy, which is unfolding today, provides for much more liberalized exchanges in that regard. And actually, as a result, we've had IIT. I'm giving you that as an example. It doesn't have to be restricted either to the place or to the institution. But we've had an IIT Madras, establish a campus for African students in Zanzibar. We've had another IIT actually open a campus in UAE. So I can, and similarly inwards. I mean, we've had, I think, 2 Australian universities who have just recently come into India. And I had recently the Deputy Prime Minister of New Zealand, and he was very actively interested in these. So I can envisage a situation where, education would be much more transboundary than it has been before, which I think should be good news. You can think of yourself in a way as a pioneer of this trend. But it actually signifies something much bigger, which is the idea of the world as a global workplace. A global workplace, because in many ways there will be demands for talents and skills in different parts of the world. The local geographies may not be able to respond to it all the time. There will be some professions and some domains where such mobility would be more required, and I think that will come into being. And for a country like India, it's an enormous opportunity, because when various countries speak about natural resources, there are people who have oil, there are people who have uranium. I think for us, the richest natural resource we have is people. And if we can actually invest in people, we will create for us a basis of prosperity and economic gains, quite apart from its social consequences, which would be very, very impressive. On Singapore, do I have memories? Of course I have memories, but in a way I don't also, because I keep coming back, So, you have memories. If you went to a place, then there was a long gap, and then you have nostalgia about it. I keep coming back. I keep refreshing, my acquaintance with Singapore, and, in many ways, really marveling at, how this country keeps pace with different aspects of, development in the world. You mentioned Mr. Lee Kuan Yew. Yes, I mean, I was here, for those of you who may not be familiar, from 2007, 2008, 2009. So Mr. Lee Kuan Yew was, of course, very much still a presence at that time. And I had quite a few opportunities to sit down and talk to him. I must, I still have notes of some of it. These were for me very valuable experiences, because when I think back on a long diplomatic career, I was in diplomacy for 41 years, I would surely count that among perhaps my more, one of the most learning experiences various kinds. And what I did like about him was, it would be it's a very back and forth. I mean, I think if he found value, he was willing to also make it a very, very interactive occasion. And there is much that he has said, he has written, which I think continue to be of relevance. And in a way, when our Prime Minister came here for his funeral, I think that was a expression of what a lot of Indians actually thought about Lee Kuan Yew. That Prime Minister coming here reflected what was a collective view about Mr. Lee Kuan Yew's contribution, not just to Singapore, but I would say to Asia and perhaps even beyond. The other question you asked me is of course, in some ways more difficult to answer because, there were so many, Sushma Swarajji was my minister for 3 years. And, for any ministry to work well, she herself used to say that you need a minister's secretary, a permanent secretary is the bureaucratic head of the ministry. That the political leadership and the permanent secretary, their combination, has to be a very, very strong one. That's really when a ministry really delivers. So in a sense, ours was like, we would meet, talk multiple times in a day. We often travel together. Even, I must say, she went through some very serious health issues. And there were times when her contact with people was very restricted. I was one of the few people who continued to see her even during that. So I remember her really, to say I remember her with fondness and affection would be a very, would be an understatement. This was someone with a very magnetic personality, very, very much, someone who really touches you, who bonds with you in a very personal way. And not just with me, whenever there was an occasion, for example, my mother, she was a person who would always ask about mother or family. So she was one of a kind, I would say.
Thank you. We're going to take some audience questions, and we also have lots of questions on Pigeonhole. I think they've crossed 250, so I think we will pick up some of the questions. May I request the microphone to be given to that gentleman there? Yeah, please. Yeah. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, sir. My name is... Thank you so much for coming and sharing your insights with us. The technology world is witnessing an inflection point with the rise of AI. And what we are seeing is that it's primarily led by US companies and China. I wanted your views and insights on what India is doing to build homegrown AI so that we are also in the forefront of this revolution.
Can we have 2 more questions, please? Shall we take more? No. Yeah. Okay. On this side, yes.
Good evening, Doctor. Welcome back home. My question to you, in this 4 decades in the office, can you just brief your journey from the officer to the minister? Thank you.
Thank you. And one more question. Yes, behind there. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Vivek. I want to ask this question on behalf of all NRIs who are staying here. When I came here about 15, 20 years ago, we were called brain drain. As if we are doing something bad and we have educated in India and now we are coming outside. What would be your view to say that, is it something that we can do staying in this country for something to serve back India or kind of make sure that whatever we have taken from India, we are able to repay in some way?
Can I? The first question, we are entering a world of AI. Absolutely, not just AI. I think AI, semiconductors, space, drones. We are entering a world of much more intensive technology, which, I would say every profession will change sometime during this decade as a result. So, world keeps progressing, but I think all of us intuitively know that we are at a cusp of something very, very big and very, very profound that is going to happen. Now, which big country can stay out of it? I think none of them can. Clearly, those who are more technology intensive, more industrial in a way, would right now have the lead, and that is indeed the case. But if you see, we actually are also making a huge effort in that direction. Just a few days ago, we announced an agreement to set up the first fab in India. And there are a number of ATP operations which are in progress or which are in the pipeline. If you look on the digital side, again, there's been a lot of attention to digital policies, which would be conducive to the growth of a homegrown AI industry. But I would, and we've been very active participants also. There are initiatives. There's a what's called a Bletchley Park initiative about guardrails on AI. So we're participating in the international conversations. We are motivating industry. We are trying to create some of the hardware. We are looking very seriously at challenges which pertain to data itself, data privacy, data residency, data security. So it is something which I quite accept, which will be a priority for all countries to come, certainly for us. And in a way, if I go to the education question, one of the processes, what is happening right now is also how do you change the education curriculum really to factor all of that in. That is something which is very actively being worked upon. On the question of the transition from the officer to the minister, it wasn't a transition. There was a quantum jump, and the energy from the jump, the energy for the jump was external. So it was not I who jumped. The situation or the conversation made me jump to the next level. But it's very different. It's very different because in a way, the overall canvas of responsibility is much broader. I tell my colleagues when I sit in parliament, because in India, if you're a minister, you have to be in parliament, that it's one thing to sit in the gallery and give information to your ministers or to prepare your ministers or to help answer questions, etc. It's another to actually participate in the politics, to be in the house, and the second is you are far more departmental, you're far narrower. As a even the best officer, best secretary, at the end of the day is very focused on his or her domain. The moment you become a minister, I think immediately the world opens up. There are many other issues and there are many other considerations which come to your mind. In foreign ministry, I often see the compulsions on the domestic side as a minister, which I may not have that readily appreciated when I was executing foreign policy. So, and I also think in a way, your rub I mean, again, part of being a minister is your public contacts are very much more. I think that's also contributive to having a somewhat different outlook than you would. So, honestly, for me, it has been a jump up. I would say today, I know and feel and I'm sensitive to many more things than I would have been 5 years ago because of this responsibility. On the brain drain issue, again, I made that point about today the formation of a global workplace. When COVID happened, we had all sorts of challenges. I mean, it was one of the forever. I think for anybody in any government anywhere in the world, it must have been the most stressful experience that they've ever had. But for a big country, I mean, I'm not even going into the domestic aspects of it. We would almost, I would say, every hour come upon something new. A cruise liner which has discharged people there, a university which has closed its dorm somewhere and told people to leave, an employer who said, I'm shutting down, and you employees go back to where you come from. So we were racing almost in a way to try to secure and bring back to India people who had been stranded in different situations at that time. And in that 1 year, roughly, my memory is something like about 70 lakh people were outside India who had to come back through the Vande Bharat mission. I'm sure there's some of you in Singapore also who would have used it. Now, I'm mentioning that to you because this is today a reality, the global workplace, that professions and opportunities are no longer limited to India, nor should they be. That if someone has an opportunity to get skills, to gain rewards, to contribute, because there's one thing we are very sure of. Wherever Indians live, wherever people of Indian origin live, we are absolutely convinced that India will never, go out of their minds and their hearts, that their thoughts will always be there, the desire to contribute will always be there. So, the interesting thing which I see now, in the last year and a half, we've actually negotiated 7 or 8 mobility agreements. We've done it with Germany, Austria, Portugal, Italy, Australia. We've done a specialized workers agreement with Japan. We have a number of them right now in the works. So I'm actually seeing an interest in the world also today in creating that global workplace. And when we start thinking of a global workplace, I think I come back to it again. People are our strength. People are our best resource. So, if you have a resource, you're not utilizing it by constricting that resource. You are utilizing it by maximizing that resource. So I feel the globalized India will be a better, stronger, more prosperous India.
Thank you. Very interestingly, you mentioned about your experience as a quantum jump, and we are sitting in quantum arena. So just a coincidence. I'm going to take some questions from Pigeonhole as well, which is where everybody has shown a lot of interest. I'm going to read out that to you. It's from Manish and Riddhi. Is it possible for Indians living outside to vote for their constituencies from Singapore? And we will take another question. How do you cope with stress to maintain a healthy work-life balance, which is from Ryan Kernick? And from Jaysheel, as we move into the next decade and towards 2047, what are the key elements that you suggest to NRIs for strengthening India's position as the next superpower?
The issue of the OCI issue, there are different aspects to it, okay? It's obviously given the size of Indians abroad, it's very difficult to contemplate voting outside India. Because, again, I'm giving you very rough numbers. I think there are something like 18 million Indian nationals living abroad at any given time, and 18 million who are OCIs or PIOs. I mean, OCIs don't have votes. So just the numbers itself is a very daunting prospect. I know there's the debate I frequently get asked whether OCIs can go and vote. And, you know, I in many ways, I'm very encouraged by the question, because it shows how deeply people feel invested in their motherland. That even when they live abroad, they want to be part of the change in India and want to contribute to it. So it is something which has been, you know, under discussion. I really don't have anything new to add to that. On the what are the key elements sort of to the rise of India, I would first of all really put the economy. You know, that if you look at the history of the last 100 years, finally it's the countries whose economies have been strong, who've been able to sustain their position in the world order. That you've had very powerful economy, you know, countries, but who let their economies run down, and those who have risen actually by economic. But economic also means a kind of a well-rounded growth. You know, if one part is strong, a country, for example, that neglects manufacturing, that neglects technology, will not be a country that can sustain its position in the global order. So it's important that when we speak about, strong economic growth, it should be a very balanced multi-sectoral growth. And secondly, it should be inclusive. You know, well, for me, a big change in the last decade would be how, you know, this figure that 250 million people have come out of poverty in India, absolute poverty in India, is a very powerful figure, because it should not be that economic growth means only the front end of your economy, the top part of your economy. It's important that the totality, that it's inclusive growth, all regions, all segments are covered. And the second, economy is the foundation. But I think there is leadership and vision, which is the engine. Because you can have a strong economy, but no appetite, no ambition, you don't want to take risks, you're content to stay where you are. So everything else comes sandwiched in between. But you need that economy and you need that leadership vision for a country really to rise. On the work-life balance, look, you need a balance. I mean, you need a balance, if only because that's the only way you can stay in the game all the time. So the one thing I tell people, you know, I'm a great voter of Fit India, Khelo India, Competitive India, do anything, play anything, but look after yourself. You know, all of us are better off sort of staying fit, staying active, and I try to practice it as much as I can in different ways. And again, it's not just a personal advice. I think for the well-being of a nation, it's important we are healthy. And for the competitiveness of a nation, that when a nation, you know, does well in sports, when it is physically fit, when people have that feeling about themselves, I think the aggregate, country has that mentality as well. So one part of it is when we like, you know, watching sports on TV. The other part of it is some part of it must rub on to us.
Correct. Well, we'll take some questions at the back. Yes, that gentleman there in the corner, please. Yeah.
Hi, good evening, Pranam Jaishankar ji. So you mentioned the success of G20, and this question pertains to the intricacy of diplomacy. That different nations have or form their own notion of world situation and have their own definitions. An example could be who is an aggressive state, who is a terrorist organization, and so on. So how do you and MFA officials in general broach these sensitive and linguistically different topics with your counterparts?
Okay. One more question in the center there. Yes, the right shirt, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Abhinan Prakash. I'm a scholar at GIIS. And my question is that after the revocation of Article 370 from Kashmir, the Ladakh region does not have a legislative assembly currently. And activist Sonam Wangchuk has gone on a 21-day strike currently demanding for the implementation of the 6th schedule in Ladakh. And there is also an argument that implementation of 6th schedule and giving autonomy to Ladakh will strengthen India's position against China's encroachment. And it was also in the ruling party's manifesto that the 6th schedule will be implemented. So what is your opinion on the implementation of 6th schedule in Ladakh? Thank you.
Okay, and we can have one.
Hello.
We can have one of the questions there. Somebody was raising a mic here.
Yeah, so I have one question. Thanks, it's always insightful to hear you, Dr. Jaishankar. I was watching one of your interviews very recently, and I think you very smartly escaped one of the questions. So let me tweak it, and then probably, hopefully, I'll get the answer today. So what is that one thing which is very exciting versus concerning for you when it comes to next Indo-US presidency, which is at the verge of changing?
Thank you.
What is the one thing next, the next
US presidency?
Next US presidency.
Which is at the verge of changing. I'm talking about the Trump presidency coming next.
You want to take one more?
We'll take one more over there. Yes, the girl in the white shirt, yes.
We had a long-standing positive relationship with Russia, but given the recent Russians drifting over to China and the Russians' involvement in global affairs, how do you think our relationship with Russians will evolve?
Okay. You know, what happens in diplomacy is different countries obviously bring their own culture, their own tradition, sometimes their own language or concepts to bear. That's fair. It's also natural that there will be different viewpoints. And what diplomacy is about is to find a way of reconciling it and coming to some kind of agreement. But there are some issues where actually there is clarity. I mean, don't believe that there is confusion. You spoke about linguistic differences. And I give you an example. You can take it in any language, but a terrorist is a terrorist in any language. That never allow something like terrorism to be excused or defended because they're using a different language or a different explanation. So there will be issues where, yes, genuinely you can have different viewpoints. There will be issues when they are used as a cover, as an excuse, as a justification. We should be able to spot the difference and figure out a way of how to deal with it. In a way, you know, I kind of jump from there to the Russia question. I'll come back to the other two questions later. A lot of diplomacy is being able to have, you know, different relationships with different powers. After all, think about it in your own personal life. I mean, do each one of you have only one friend? And do all your friends and acquaintances necessarily get along with each other? No, you don't. You don't allow any person to monopolize your life. So you have work friends, you have home friends, you have family, you have sports friends, so whatever it is. And you have figured out a way how to maintain that balance, how to manage the different relationships. If two of them have a problem getting along with each other, you have figured out a way of when to step in, when not to step in. That's take it to a macro level. That's really what a country like India does in terms of managing the world. So for us, when you speak about Russia, we should look at Russia, or not just Russia, any country. And India should look at that relationship and that partner from the perspective of Russia, perspective of India. So I have to ask myself, okay, there's a Russia relationship. So tell me, has Russia helped us or harmed us? Has Russia at crucial moments contributed or obstructed? Going ahead, are there gains to be made from Russia, or is it only damages which will come out of that? So if I do my calculation from my perspective and my experiences, I will get the answer. And the answer in this case is that Russia is a country with which we have always had a positive relationship. Both India and Russia have taken that extra care to look after each other's interests. So I think we should have that confidence as we go forward. So coming to the 370, look, I don't want to go, I normally do not discuss in Indian politics when I'm out of India. So anytime any of you want to discuss politics with me, I invite you to come to India. I'll be very happy to have a private or a public conversation with you. But I do want to make one point, and the point is this, that Article 370, which was a temporary measure of the Indian Constitution, by extending it, two things happened which harmed us as a nation. One, it created an ethos of separatism, of violence, of terrorism, and this became a problem for the security of the entire country. And the second, it prevented very progressive laws from being extended to Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh at that point of time. So today you can see the benefits of the change that have happened. There is naturally a debate on what happens after this, but as I said, that is a debate which is best undertaken in India. On the US presidency, there will be an election, obviously, on the first Tuesday of November of this year. I think we all know who the two main candidates are. Bear in mind, technically speaking, there are more candidates. You appear very knowledgeable and confident about the activities. I prefer to be patient and to maintain my confidence that India has the ability to get along with whoever is the President of the United States.
Well, we also have a lot of young audience today, and because we are a school, we have that, and we will get some questions from the students. Yes, please. Yes.
Hello, sir. Good evening. My name is Shravya from One World International. My question for you today is, how can international schools promote cultural awareness and inclusivity, and what actions can students take to create a more inclusive environment within their school community?
Yes, we have one more question. Thank you.
Good evening, sir. I'm Adya Handa, studying in CBSE 12 at GIS. And as we know that technology, connectivity, and trade are paramount in today's time. And we've seen the world transform into a digital economy, as you've mentioned before. From your perspective, what are the key qualities and skills a student should possess in today's day and time? And how can we cultivate it within ourselves? Thank you.
Sure, and we take one more question there. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Honorable EM, very warm welcome, sir. Thanks for answering this brain drain thing. That was one of my questions. You have amazingly replied for it. My heart is full. So I have another one for you. You have given me some amazing insights of Bharat being a global friend. On the same context, despite having good ties globally and in specific with Singapore, it sometimes is disheartening to see that social visit visa for Indians is still dream, despite having an amazing EAM like you. Is there anything on cards for us soon? And also, what's the way forward for the increased passport strength of India? Thank you.
Yes, one last one. Yes, center. Just behind the camera. Here.
Hi, sir. I'm Anushree. I'm 16, and it's an honor to be speaking to you right now. And like you're a face of inspiration to the youth of India as well. Like looking at all your replies and comebacks from interviews where India was kind of targeted, and the way you did it was absolutely amazing. And it looked kind of effortless. So, but I'm a strong believer of anything that looks effortless or seems effortless. There was a lot of efforts that were put in order for you to answer that way, the way you did, the India way. And I was hoping if you could tell us, how did you develop that skill? And another question I have was, being the external affairs minister of a country as dynamic and as beautiful as India, that was one thing that I was wondering is like, what's the most favorite part of your job in a very challenging as well as exciting world today? And what's something, for the lack of a better word, you don't like about what you're doing? Thank you.
Thank you.
The first question about cultural awareness, I think, all of you students must understand that you actually have a phenomenal, you have an opportunity of studying with students of multiple backgrounds in an environment which itself is much more globally exposed than many other students would tend to get. And these really can shape your life, uh, when I look back, once actually I was doing a kind of gig with my American counterpart in a university in Washington. And this question was suddenly popped saying, how did you become interested in foreign policy? And I gave the instinctive answer. I said, when I was a child, I first, at that time, must seem like a totally different age to most of you. We actually had a record where I listened to foreign music. And then we had books which, told us something about foreign countries. Some of them were by foreign authors. So for a generation, I had never traveled out. I went out of India first time when I was 24 after I got a job in the foreign service. So for us, foreign meant these examples, a book, a record, a music, something you saw on TV, listened on the radio. Today, those who have the much more intensive experience, even sitting in India, I think the ability to understand the nuances of the world, the complexity of the world is much more. I really think you should use that opportunity. And particularly, to the extent again, I would say languages, other languages come in very, very helpful, not just as a communication skill, actually as a cultural skill, as a understanding, that you deal with other people so much more effectively when you are somewhat more immersed in their culture. And I think that's something you should make the most of. In terms of, what are the skills that students today need to prepare themselves? It's happening, it's happening because if you look today at the world of startups, of innovations, there are people still in high school who actually already are taking up this challenge. So in that sense, I think, yes,
in different countries, governments, states would be enablers of various kinds. They can give you facilities, they can give you support, they can give you policies. But my sense is, I certainly see this in India, and I'm sure that must be the case in your schools as well, that a lot of young people just naturally get involved today in the world of technology, the world of innovation, in an ability to conceptualize. I mean, one of the between India and Singapore, one of the things we do is we do a hackathon. So that's a very good example of this ability to look at people trying to deal with issues in a very novel way. So I think the more you innovate, experiment, challenge yourself in different fields. I mean, it doesn't have to be necessarily technical or technological. It could be in other fields as well. On the passport issues, I don't discuss other people's policies, certainly not in public. I can only talk about my own. And look, the strength of a passport is a very complicated issue, because people often say, okay, how many countries that can you go to without a visa? Now, obviously, a country which has a large population is not going to have that same visa ability as a country with a small population. So, to my mind, that's not a fair assessment. I would say today, you look, in a way, it's something you will realize. The strength of your passport depends on how you are treated when you leave India. And I suggest to you today that the way you are looked at today is with greater respect. And the strength of our passport, as this is something I said yesterday as well in another gathering, is you are a national today of a country which has your back. However, you talked about Sushma ji. One of her famous tweets was, somebody said something, and she said, even if you are in Mars, we'll come there and take care of you. So the point is, we can now with Gaganyaan, but the point is, look, if you have the ability today to secure your citizens, to respond to situations, to have the processes, the systems to take care of people, that is something which is, to my mind, also a very important factor in the strength of the passport. And the sort of how do you respond? Look, what is my business about? I'm supposed to go out, make friends, influence people, get people to agree with me, mostly do what I like them to do. Occasionally, you sort of have disagreements, you manage them the best that you can do. But the world's not always a courteous place. So you end up in situations where often people put you under pressure. There can be, and sometimes, not everybody, Atul, is as nice as you are. So you can have these very difficult conversations. But that's where, to some degree, experience and instincts come. So, I mean, if I can use a cricketing metaphor, if you see a Yorker coming, you step out of the crease, it becomes a low full toss. Then you know what to do with it. So don't let people come at you. Don't let people put you on the defensive. If you are, particularly, frankly, if you're standing up for a country, and this is a country of 1.4 billion people, there is a certain responsibility which comes with it. There are times when you need to push back strongly. There are times when you are more patient and you say, okay, don't worry, sit down with me, you haven't fully understood what I'm trying to get to you. And there is a way of doing that as well. But in a more intensive social media driven existence, I think at times you do need to behave like you're in the IPL. Okay.
Thank you. I think we have had a wonderful session. I still have 200 questions, but I'll pass it on to you later. But there's a last question that somebody of you has asked, that can we have a selfie with you? Well, we can't have selfie with each of you, but ministers agreed kindly to come and stand there and give you a selfie with everyone. And before we close the session, I must say thanks to all our team members. Minister, this is entirely executed by our internal school team members, 70 of them who worked tirelessly for the last 7 days, given that we just got this site just about 7 days back. So thank you to all of you. And you all can just stay there where you are. We're going to come down and we are going to have a selfie with all of you. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Minister. And it's a wonderful engagement. Thank you.
Please, could everyone remain seated? Please remain seated. Thank you, Dr. Jaishankar, for your insightful responses, and to the audience for your engaging questions. Your participation has made this session a very fruitful experience. Please remain seated as our esteemed guests, Dr. S. Jaishankar and Mr. Temurkar, take their seats amongst the audience for a quick photograph. Thank you to Singapore's Indian community that has gathered here today for this event. Once the photograph is done, I will request you all to please stand for the Indian National Anthem. Please remain in your seats for now. Everyone's very excited.
तव शुभ नामे गाहे, तव शुभ आशीष माहे, गाहे तव जय गाथा, जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता, जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे।
Thank you all. Please be seated. I would like to extend my sincerest gratitude to all the speakers, performers, and attendees for making this event a remarkable success. We hope you leave here today feeling informed, inspired, and connected. Jai Hind.
Testing. Hi, we need all the audience to stay at your seat